Sullivan off his right. Oh, Chicane. Oh, I do not believe that. Harry. Oh, this is getting better and better and better. It's Torres holding his tie. In the Champions League final. The headline has been written.
Hi, I'm Anthony Kendrick on the V2 podcast, and joining me this week I've got Ian Burchnall, who is the Viking FK Managerial Assistant. Hi Ian, you well?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah.
Just like to talk about your club to start with. How did you end up at Viking?
You say Viking, I say Viking, because I'll say it the Norwegian way. So they call it Viking over here, but yeah, it's of course for English it's Viking. But I've been here from January this season, so I signed as assistant manager this season. Previously to that, I was at another Norwegian club, Sarpsborg, where I was assistant manager for 2 years, also in the top league in Norway. So I came over from England to Norway 2.5 years ago. We had two good years at Sarpsborg. Really enjoyed it there. We had some good relative success for a small club, and then an opportunity came up. The former assistant at Viking went on to go and become the Rosenborg manager. So that opened up a position. My contract was running out, and so I ended up at Viking.
Rosenborg are the top team in Norwegian league, aren't they?
Right now they are, yeah. Molde won it last year, so really the last couple of years have been between Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Molde, Ronny Deila, who's at Celtic now, his club Strømsgodset, or his former club Strømsgodset, and Rosenborg are top right now. But this season Rosenborg are very strong.
Well, you're fourth at the moment in the table after 13 games.
Yeah.
You're looking at a top 3 finish, I assume, or Europa League.
Yeah, we hope so. Yeah, top 3 will give us Europa League. So that would be an aim for us. The club's not qualified for Europe. The last time we got into Europe was 2004, I believe, when Roy Hodgson was the manager. So since then, they haven't had enough European exposure. So the club really wants that. They finished 10th last year, so it would be a big jump to go from 10th to 3rd this year. But right now we're well placed in 4th.
Well, you mentioned it. Roy Hodgson was there before, and Uwe Rosler, who went to Wigan and now is at Leeds. There's been good managers there recently. Yeah, there has. Yeah, the club's got fantastic history. Viking was a very, very big club in the 70s. It won 5 league titles, and it's won the last league title was, I think, 1991. It won the cup in 2001. So in Norwegian terms, Viking's one of the biggest clubs over here with a great history, and it's had, like you say, good managers like Roy Hodgson, Uwe Rosler. The assistant a few years ago was a guy called Pep Clotet, that's now the assistant to Gary Monk at Swansea as well. So there's a strong link between English football and Viking, actually. I've noticed as well, mentioned before, halfway through the season, does it take some getting used to the season being like throughout the calendar year rather than the August to June we have in England?
Yeah, yes and no. The hardest thing to adjust to is probably a 12-week pre-season. So we finish kind of middle of November, and we give the players 5-6 weeks off over Christmas, and then we're back in early January. But the season often doesn't start until the end of March, early April. So 3 months we have a pre-season through the winter in Norway, which is pretty tough going. But when the season gets going, it's quite enjoyable to play through the summer months. And you have to when you're going up to places like Tromsø and the real north of Norway.
Whereas
it's much better. It's much better to play in the middle of summer than the middle of winter there.
Yeah.
So I quite like the summer season actually, and I think, of course, not for top leagues in England, but perhaps lower leagues and junior football would benefit from perhaps some summer football with better weathers, better quality of pitches and things like that. So from that point of view, it's good, but the long pre-season can be a bit of a killer.
Do you think, as well, it's nice to get the Christmas off, I suppose? There's a lot of press here for the winter break in England.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I guess at Premier League level, there's it's fun. Whenever I come back over Christmas now, I love to go on Boxing Day to go and watch the football, and the Christmas period for football is fantastic. But when you go out of the top few divisions,
and you see, especially in the non-leagues, local leagues and junior football, the kind of pitches, the standard of pitches that are going on through the middle of winter and through bad weather, it would probably serve well to have a few weeks off and extend it further into the summer when everything's in a much better condition.
Do you think there's problems with the heat though, like it being too hot and unbearable for players, or is that not an issue in, say, Norway?
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, being too hot and unbearable is certainly not an issue here. It might get to 25, but then we're having a great time. But it's not getting any hotter than that.
Oh,
so we don't have a great issue with the heat. So it's in fact we haven't seen much of that so far. Last summer was fantastic, but this summer we've seen mainly rain. So
yeah,
we're praying for a bit of sun at some point.
I've seen news on the BBC recently. They've talked about potentially Scotland moving to a similar sort of season to Norway and other Northern European teams. Do you think that would serve the Scottish league well?
I think it might. I think it might in terms of the quality of the league, and if you think through the summer months where it's lighter later on, better weather, you might get more people going into the stadiums as well, rather than hammering down with rain on a Tuesday night. So you might actually fill the stadiums. It might get perhaps a better atmosphere around during the summer. But on the flip side, one thing that Norway struggled with in recent times is actually qualifying teams through into Europe, into Champions League and to Europa League group stages. And if they do make it through, they also have problems because our season is not running when Europe's on. We finish in November, and the teams that want to progress in Europe, there's European leagues running through the winter period. So I guess for clubs, you can imagine Celtic, if they don't play from November until April, if they're in the Champions League, they can have a problem then. So I guess there's pros and cons to both sides of the argument.
I suppose it'd be a happy problem for you guys if you get Europa League next season.
Yeah, it'd be a fantastic problem to have. I'd quite happily stay over here through the winter months if we could get into the Europa League group stages, definitely.
Looking at the team, I had a look through the team. Are there any players in particular that stand out that you think will only be stars of the future?
I mean, we obviously, within our squad, we've probably got 7 or 8 international players, so there's quite a few playing on in international scene. We've got an Estonian international, Karol Metz, who's a centre back. He played against England in the qualifiers. Who's a good young player with potential. We've got a young boy that's actually going out of contract now, Veton Berisha. He scored 9 goals this season, and I think a lot of clubs are talking about him. And some good young Nigerian players, good players from Iceland. So we've got a whole range of talent that could go on. We've actually got quite a young team this year, and quite an exciting team. So for me, Norway is a great place especially for young players to play at. And what's happened in Norway probably over the last 4 or 5 years is a lot of clubs have encountered not financial problems, but they haven't been able to spend big money to get players here. And so therefore the emphasis is on young players and developing players and blooding talent. So it's been quite a place we get a lot of clubs from Belgium, Holland, Bundesliga, and some from England and Scotland looking at the leagues and looking at the players that we've got, because there is a lot of good young talent here.
What sort of emphasis is there on the local talent? Like, it seemed, I had a quick look through the leagues. It seemed like there was quite a few Norwegian players playing. But you mentioned the foreign players. Are there any good young Norwegians?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, Viking. We've got. I think when we played the first game of the season, we had 7 players that were from the local area. I mean, some were 30 years old and have been at the club for 10 years, but there's a clear intent that we do want players from our local area that go through and play for the first team. But of course, you have to kind of blend that with some young talent from abroad. We've got some young Nigerians, and sometimes players from different countries as well kind of add different things that you don't get from the players that you've got that we have from the local area. So what we get is we get some good talent coming through, and then we look to also bring in different kinds of players from the ones that we've got that we don't have within the local area. But when you look from team to team, there's generally a lot of young Norwegian players playing in each team, so it's good from that point of view.
Someone else, AJ Soers, I was aware of. I've heard of him. I've noticed he's generally the other starting centre back for you.
Yes, he pronounced it's actually AJ Suarez.
All right, I assume with the US.
Yeah, we signed him from the MLS from New England Revolution this winter. Great guy, excellent player, good signing. Has been a good centre back for us so far. So yeah, we're really satisfied with that. So yeah, we recruit from all over, and like I say, we've got some good local talent and some good talent from abroad as well.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to move on to talk about yourself. How did you get into coaching?
I guess didn't exactly have a playing career to write home about. Just played local non-league football, and as a result, I originally coming from Leicester. I then moved up to Leeds and studied at Leeds Met University. I studied a sports science degree. Did that for 3 years. And whilst I was studying up there, I just got a job working part time with Leeds United football in the community, and from there began slowly doing different things. I picked up work with Leeds United Academy. I got a job as head performance coach at the University of Leeds. I spent 4 years at Leeds United working in the academy, and then part time at Leeds University for almost 7 years there. Also, I was at Bradford City for 3 years. Worked at the academy once I finished at Leeds, and then I just took as many possible coaching jobs and possibilities that I could to kind of gain as much experience and as much exposure to coaching as possible. Went through my badges. I took my UEFA B, then UEFA A, and I'm now just finishing off my pro license. So I've been through kind of the education and also worked at a range of different places. So, and then of course from there, whilst I was working at the University of Leeds, I met Brian Dean, who came to work alongside me at the University of Leeds. We got on really well, both learned from each other, and Brian actually got the job at Sarpsborg 2.5 years ago as the manager there, and brought me in as assistant. So then I went there as assistant, and Brian's gone back to England, hoping to get some management work in England, and I got offered something at Viking and wanted to continue my career out in Norway. So I stayed out here, but it's been a good journey. It's been like I say, I've tried to gain a range of experience and tried to coach as many different kind of age groups. So I've worked from under 6, 7s at Leeds United through to under 19s at professional clubs, along with university football, England universities, and I think that put me in a good position in terms of my experience for when I finally took over it. Started coaching at professional level.
So you mentioned near the start you moved to Sarpsborg before Viking.
Yeah.
What made you go to Norway of all places? Did you specifically want to be there, or was it just a good opportunity and you went? Or?
Yeah, it was a good opportunity. I felt for me, I worked in academies for 7 or 8 years in England, and I felt that in England, I didn't feel that I was going to get taken seriously at first team level, because I felt that the clubs where I've been were more interested in looking at people that had either a good name as a player, or were well connected in with the management. So I didn't feel that necessarily it was a matter of whether or not I was competent enough to work at first team level, but more a factor of whether or not my face fitted in the right places. So when an opportunity to step up to work with professional first team players came in Norway, I knew that Norway was a nice place to live. I've been here before, and I had no hesitation really. I spoke to the club at Sarpsborg. It was a small club that had just been promoted to the Premier League here. They were quite ambitious. They had quite a clear footballing style and philosophy that they wanted to play by, which suited me. And so I felt that it was a good fit for me and my development.
Do you think chances for English coaches are more limited abroad? You sort of touched on it. And do you think more coaches should be going abroad?
I think that hard in the game in England. There's a lot of coaches, and there's a lot of good coaches as well. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of very good coaches in England, but there's not that many jobs. And when you see, say, management jobs come up, you often see the same names cropping up over and over again. I don't say that that's the wrong names, but I just say it's hard to break into that kind of circle of coaches. And like I say, I felt that in England there was a perception that because I was young, because I had not played professional, that I was suited to working with young players and academy football, whereas I strive to work with the first team and top professional players. So I felt it was difficult, and it is hard to break through, especially if you've not been a player. If you've not been a pro with a good name, it is definitely harder to break through. But and that's why I felt that this opportunity for me gave me exposure to work with international level footballers on a daily basis. So it was really driving me to improve my coaching, and then hopefully get enough on my CV if I do well to maybe come back and then be taken more seriously in a role like that in England.
Well, I think through the English coaches in the Premier League, and I can't think of many who weren't they're either foreign and brought in, or they've had a good career as a player previously. I can't think of many who build their way up as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you think about coaches in England, I mean, Rodgers wasn't a pro, but he played. I think he was injured early before he kind of broke through as a professional. So he then did his coaching education and built his way up. And I guess Mourinho did the same, from the respect that he was a translator and had to get in through there, and Wenger. But in general, it's not that easy. And of course, it's when you haven't been around the professional level game and had a name as a player, understandably, it's difficult then to get your name out there and show what you're capable of. And that's why, for me, it's a perfect opportunity to go abroad. And I would say to many young coaches, and whether they've been a former pro or are just looking to gain more experience, that it's a great environment. You learn a different language, a different culture. You learn about different types of footballers, different styles of play. So you learn a lot when you're outside of a comfort zone all the time. So it drives you to be better, I think. And I would certainly recommend it to any coaches thinking about it.
I'm sure Paul Clement would recommend it as well. He's done well at PSG and Real Madrid, and now he's just recently took over my hometown club, Derby County.
Okay, you're a Derby fan.
Yeah, I suppose I'm from there.
Okay. That's I'm a Leicester boy, so Derby's a bit of a rival. But yeah, Paul Clement is obviously Paul Clement's a great example of somebody that I believe he was a PE teacher.
Yeah.
And worked at Chelsea Academy and worked his way up. So of course, anything's possible if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to put in the effort, and you're willing to test yourself and take yourself out of the comfort zone and try something different. There's always opportunities out there. But of course, you've got to be sometimes in the right place at the right time when those opportunities come up, and be willing to take them.
I was just about to say that. Is it a case of just getting that right place? But I suppose you've got to work to be in that right place before being.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you have. You've got to put yourself out there, and you have to kind of make things happen yourself. And I felt I did that. And of course, like I said before, when I went to Salzburg, Brian Dean was the head coach, and I knew Brian from England. And Brian's a great guy, and he's very, very. Me and him worked together for a few years prior to us both going out to Salzburg. So we kind of built a good relationship from that point of view. And I think Brian was the kind of guy, although he'd had 20 years as a player, was really keen to learn and open to learn and develop himself. So from that point of view, he saw in me an opportunity to perhaps look at football from a different perspective, because I hadn't had the playing experience, but I'd had a lot of coaching experience in different environments. And for me, I could learn a lot from him because of his playing experience. So it was kind of a mutually beneficial working relationship that we had. So of course, when we went to Salzburg, we felt that we were in a good position take the job and do well with it. And I think it was both beneficial for me and him to have kind of worked together in that environment. And I guess we were both lucky that we wanted to follow the same path.
It does sound great, getting out of your comfort zone, doing something different. I suppose it's the English mentality almost to stick to what you know rather than going out there and trying to do something different.
Yeah, I agree. And to be honest, I spoke to people when I got the job at Salzburg. I spoke to people about that I was going out to Norway and I was working in the Premier League, and even people around in football, guys that work at professional clubs in England, would say to me, "Oh, you're off out to Norway. Oh, what sort of level is that? Is it like Conference North level?"
Yeah.
And they had no idea really. We played Rosenborg away first year I was here, and there was 22,000 people in the stadium.
Yeah.
And it's a great environment. When I was at Salzburg and here at Viking now, I work with players that are playing international European Championship qualifiers, and then coming back and playing for us. So the level is far better than people probably perceive it to be. So even if you are stepping out of your comfort zone and going to a place like Norway, it's not like you're going to work with some park footballers. You're working with top level pros. So it's fantastic environment. And one thing that I definitely feel certainly about the players here, is they're extremely open to learning and developing and being better. So when I came in, I felt that it was they were extremely receptive to a new culture and new ideas, and somebody from another country coming in and impacting on their football.
What do you think to English players? Like, you don't see many English players moving abroad. Like, well, maybe at a lower level, but not even there, I suppose.
No, there really isn't that. Of course, there's players that play abroad, but I don't think there's enough considering how many players we produce in England. So hundreds and thousands and thousands of players are coming in through systems, right from top level to semi-professional level. Yet very, very few are willing to kind of embrace and take a risk, and I think that's fundamentally a problem within England, that not enough players get exposure outside of the UK, especially at top level. Because when you look across the board at Spanish players are all over Europe, German players, French players are all over Europe, but English players don't get all over Europe. They're not exposed to different cultures, different languages, different style of football, different environments. So then when we do sometimes go into international competition, I don't feel that our players are always as prepared fully as perhaps some of the other guys that are coming from all over the world and can bring, Brazilian players are coming from countries worldwide and bringing lots of different experiences back to the national team. And I think that can be a really good thing. And that's why I guess Roy Hodgson, Roy Hodgson may divide opinion back home. I don't know, but for me, he's somebody that represents a guy that's coached all over the world globally. He coached in Norway, in Sweden, in Denmark, Finland, Switzerland, Italy, United Arab Emirates, and England. So he's got a wealth of knowledge that brings back to the England team. So, somebody like that, we should have plenty of respect for the journey that he's been on and the position he's in now. And I think many players could certainly benefit. The biggest issue is, of course, most countries can't compete with the finances that English clubs can pay. So then the motivation drops then for players to go out. Experience enough is often not what they're looking for when the wages won't reflect it quite as much.
Well, you think of someone like Eric Dier, who grew up in Portugal, played for Sporting and moved to Spurs for, I think, a decent fee, I think 6 million or something this season, and he's fitted straight into their team, and I think he was at the England under-21 squad. He's been regular for them. But apart from that, the best English players I think of, you've got Michael Mancienne, who I think went to Germany, Joey Barton in France. There's not many.
There's been Ashley Cole in Roma, and the players have obviously gone out, and of course players like Beckham and Michael Owen and guys like that have been over to Spain, McManaman, but it's not lots of them, and they're relatively few and far between. And I think, like I said, for the quality of play that we have, and the amount of players that are around in England, not enough are going abroad. I mean, I've often looked at, perhaps when players are being released from clubs like I don't know, Chelsea, Man City, Man U, some of the bigger clubs in the Premier League, if they have the possibility to go and sign at League One and League Two clubs, and that can be great for them. But I don't think many explore the opportunity to maybe go to a top club in Norway, because the opportunity in Norway is that they could end up playing in Europe, playing in the Champions League. But I think too many players are a little bit worried that if they step out of England, they might never get back in there. And they might be a forgotten man. But really, you can end up playing, for example, in Sweden, Malmo playing in the Champions League this year. A young player could go there and get European experience, which could be better for his development than dropping down a few leagues in his own country.
Well, Rosenborg.
So I think, yeah.
Sorry, Rosenborg pretty regularly, aren't they? Well, there or thereabouts. I'm sure I've seen them in the group stage of the Champions League a few times recently.
Yeah, they're in. I think 2007 might have been the last time that they were group stages. So it's a few years ago now, but they're often in the qualifiers and in and around. Tromsø were in the group stages of Europa League 2 years ago. In fact, they played Tottenham on a Thursday and we played them on the Sunday. It was great for us because Tottenham just bounced the ball around them for 90 minutes and they looked absolutely shattered. So when they turned up at our place on the Sunday, we were 3-0 up by half time, so it's fantastic. So Europa League did us a favour there, but Tromsø were in it, group stages, and teams. I think the European qualifiers are starting next week, so we have Strømsgodset, Rosenborg, Molde, and Odd Grenland that are all in qualifiers next week. So hopefully one or two of those can get through into the group stages and again raise the profile a little bit in Norwegian football.
Must be strange qualifying for the Champions League or Europa League in like November and not playing in it until the following summer.
Obviously now for us we're in the middle of our season and then the Europa League qualifiers begin now and then the group stages go through until November. So if they qualify through that, then obviously the clubs play through January within it, but not that many clubs in Norway have made it out of the group stages if they get there. But the target for most Norwegian clubs is if they can qualify for Europe and get into the group stages, it's fantastic because they get 3 or 4 huge games then against big European teams, which is what they look for.
Oh no, I meant like qualifying as in finishing in the top 3 in the Norwegian league and then actually starting.
Oh yeah, of course, yes, sorry, yeah. If we finish in 3rd in November, we have to wait until the following summer. Yeah, so it's a long wait, but I guess it gives you plenty of preparation. I guess the only downside to having a lot of success with a club in Norway is quite often you often lose your best couple of players because they become sought after, and then you have to rebuild again. So by the time the qualifiers come round, perhaps you've got a totally different side than the one that you actually qualified with. But that's the challenge of rebuilding the team and seeing where you can take it.
Are there any names in particular that have left the Norwegian league and moved on?
Well, most notably probably Martin Odegaard at Real Madrid now. Of course, he's the pin-up boy for Norwegian football right now. But there's been players that have gone over to Germany, like Tarek Elanusi playing at Hoffenheim. There's players that play at FC Twente. There's some players like, of course, the Norwegian boys that went to Cardiff, like Mats Muller-Dali. Mm-hmm. We've got Stefan Johansson, who was Player of the Year up in Scotland. He played at Strømsgodset a couple of years ago. Excellent football player. So there's plenty. Fredrik Ulvestad signed at Burnley. So there's players that are coming out of the Norwegian League and going into Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga. So like I say, it's a good breeding ground for talent.
All right. Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Good luck against Kristiansund. I hope that's okay.
That is, yeah, Kristiansund. That's our cup game tomorrow night.
All right. Well, good.
The league below, so yeah, a tough away game.
You said you had an interesting journey there. You mentioned before.
Yeah, nothing in Norway. If anybody knows the geography of Norway, it's all mountains and fjords, so it's never an easy journey. It's always planes, trains, and automobiles to every game. So we've had a couple of flights and a long bus trip